Chapter 10. The ink stain on the obsidian desk was spreading. It was a slow, oily black stain that looked like a map of a country that didn't exist, drowning the elegant formulas Alex had spent the last hour pretending to understand. He didn't move to clean it. He was still full with the residual static of the orange breach. His lungs were burning as if he had been breathing in copper dust. His unfriendly, gloomy face was twisted into something sharper now. The orange flash had stripped away the disappointed potato and left something raw and jagged underneath. He wasn't looking at the scroll anymore. He was looking at Margot. "Who are you, Margot?" he asked again. His voice was a low rasp that vibrated in my shared throat. It sounded less like a student and more like the boy who had once followed a vampire into a corridor of doors. Margot didn't flinch. She didn't look like the girl who got top marks in dimensional theory anymore. She leaned into his space with her scent, salt and something metallic, like a wet battery in the rain, overwhelming the smell of old parchment. Her amber eyes were huge, catching the rhythmic white pulse of the spire's energy outbursts. "I'm someone who's tired of being a grey mask, Alex," she whispered. She reached out with her fingers touching the scars on his hand. Her touch was warm, but it felt calculated, like a doctor checking a pulse. "Just like you, just like your father was." I felt Alex stiffen. The mention of Alistair was a hook, and Margot knew exactly how to pull it. From the passenger seat I wanted to scream at him. I had seen her hand on that guard's lens. I had seen the yellow ripple that grounded the department's security wards. This girl wasn't a rebel, she was a professional. But Alex wasn't listening to the ghost in his head. He was drowning in the amber of her eyes. "The orange," Alex muttered, with his grip on her hand tightening until his knuckles turned white. "Someone was in my head." "You felt it. You knew it was happening before I did." "I felt the pressure," Margot said, with her voice dropping to a conspirational hum. "The department doesn't just teach us, Alex. They monitor us. They're looking for leaks. That breach, it was a probe from the higher levels. They're looking for whatever is making your resonance spike. They know you're carrying something that doesn't belong in a normal student." She looked up at the balconies rising above them. 98 more floors of obsidian and secrets that disappeared into a pinpoint of white light. "They're holding on to something at the top of this needle, something so big it's making the whole world vibrate, and they're using students like us as the grounding wires. We're just the biological insulation, Alex. Don't you want to see what's actually behind the curtain? Don't you want to know why they killed your father's research?" "How?" Alex asked. The gloom in his eyes was being replaced by a dangerous, desperate curiosity. "There's a scroll in the level 5 archives," Margot said with her eyes flashing. "It's a record of the Alistair's project. Why he was brought to Targetford. If we find it, we find out why you're really here. Why they've been watching you since the day you were born." It was a lie. I knew it was a lie, or at least a half-truth designed to lead him by the nose. But it was a beautiful lie, and Alex was starving for a reason to matter. He was a depressed teen who had just been told he was a protagonist. We moved through the spire like shadows. Level 2 was a library for the masses, a place of dust and by heart memorization, but level 5 was where the stone began to feel heavy. The architecture changed here. The obsidian walls were smoother, etched with white runes that hummed at a frequency that made my real teeth on level 81 ache. The air was colder, tasting of ozone and deep storage stasis. Status check, 32%. The machine voice in my head whispered. Core temperature nominal. Vessel synchronization holding. The spire was a giant security silo. As we moved, we passed grey masks, guards who looked through Alex as he was part of the furniture. They saw a gloomy student with his tutor heading for a late-night study session. They didn't see the passenger. They didn't see the gold essence leaking through the cracks in Alex's soul. Wait! Margot hissed, pulling Alex into a deepened doorway as a patrol passed. The guard mages moved with a rhythmic, clinking sound, with their crystal staffs casting long, distorted shadows on the floor. I felt Alex's heart hammering against my shared ribs. He looked at Margot, at the way the dim light traced the line of her jaw, and I felt a wave of genuine softening wash over him. He wanted to protect her. He wanted to be the man she thought he was. Use the resonance, Alex, she whispered, with her hand guiding his towards the obsidian lock of the archive doors. Don't think about the formulas, just feel the warmth. Push the heat into the stone. Alex closed his eyes. I felt him reaching for the gold essence, though he didn't have a name for it. He just felt a warmth in his chest, a radiant surge of energy that felt like a secret he was keeping from himself. I was the one doing the work. My essence slid into the spire's power lines like a skeleton key, mimicking the white frequency of the department, while carrying the raw weight of the gold. The lock clicked, a deep heavy sound that echoed in my real bones 80 floors above. The archives of level 5 were a vast vertical chamber of floating shelves. Thousands of scrolls were drifting in the dark, held in place by gravity wells that were humming with a low, mournful tone. It felt like a graveyard for ideas. Find the Alistair's file, Margot whispered. I'll watch the door. Alex hurried into the stacks. His fingers were trembling as he scanned the labels. He was focused on his past, on the ghost of a father who had never really been there. He was vulnerable, and that was when Margot started her real work. I watched through the TV screen of Alex's peripheral vision. Margot wasn't watching the door. She was moving towards the primary structural pillars, the massive obsidian bones that channeled the white mana from the core to the rest of the spire. She moved with a terrifying, practiced grace. This wasn't a student. This was a professional entering a kill zone. She pulled a small crystal node from her travel cloak. It was a jagged sliver of glass that pulsed with a dull, sickly yellow light. She pressed the node into the stone. I felt an alarm through the connection as the yellow light bled into the obsidian, vanishing instantly. She moved to the next pillar, then the next. She was planting parasites in the spire's nervous system. Each node was a grounding wire designed to rot the white shields from the inside out. Margot? Alex called out from the darkness with his voice echoing through the stacks. I found it! Alistair's file, but the seal is different. It's marked with a grey mask and a level 80 clearance tag. Margot turned, with her face instantly shifting back into the mask of a concerned friend. She hurried over to him, with her hand landing on his shoulder. The intimacy was a weapon, a sensory distraction that made Alex's head swim. Let me see, my dear, she whispered, her voice being a soft velvet weight. She leaned in, with her hair brushing against Alex's cheek. I felt the pulse of her yellow magic again. Not a scream like Martha's red fury, but a low-frequency hum. She was activating the nodes. The effect was instant. On level 81, I felt a violent tug. It was as if someone had opened a drain at the bottom of my tank. My gold essence was suddenly being dragged downwards, diverted into the yellow network Margot had just finished weaving. The drain was agonizing. It felt like my blood was being turned into liquid lead. Alex let out a choked, wet gasp. His knees buckled, and the scroll fell from his hands, the parchment unfurling across the obsidian floor like a white tongue. He slumped against the desk, with his vision graying out as the gold essence was ripping through his system. "Alex, stay with me!" Margot cried out. Her voice was filled with a terrifyingly genuine emotion, a mix of panic and something that looked like regret. She caught him. Her thin arms were holding him upright with a strength that didn't belong to a student. She kissed his forehead. It was a soft, lingering touch that felt like a blessing and a goodbye. "Everything is breaking," Alex wheezed, with his fingers clutching her cloak. Then a new sound cut through the silence of the archives. It wasn't a pulse. It wasn't a hum. It was a roar. The sound came from above, high above, from the direction of the Simeon corridor. It was a deep, resonant boom that shook the obsidian floor of level 5 so hard that the floating scrolls fell from their gravity wells like dead birds. The white light in the central atrium flickered and died, replaced by the frantic strobe-like emergency gray of a total breach. The high alert I had heard in the lab earlier was no longer a glitch, it was a reality. From the top down, a massive red pressure was slamming into the spire's external wards. I could feel her. It was Martha. She had arrived at the Nexus, and she was hitting the building with an immense force. Every impact felt like a hammer striking a glass tower. And from the bottom up, Margot's yellow rot was eating the floor beneath her feet. The nodes she had planted were screaming now, diverting the spire's defensive mana into the abyss, leaving the building's heart exposed to the woman at the door. "Alex, we have to move, now!" Margot hissed. Her amber eyes were no longer soft, they were hard as rock. She grabbed the Alistair's scroll and shoved it into her cloak, then hauled Alex to his feet. The spire was being hit from two sides. The Red Queen was breaking the door down from the void, and the yellow shadows were already inside, waiting to put out the lights. "The shield!" Alex gasped, looking at the grey emergency light. "They're going to burn the whole floor!" "They aren't going to burn anything," Margot said, with her voice now being cold and certain. "The spire is over, Alex. The department is over. We're going to get you out of here." She dragged him towards the exit. I felt the gold essence in my real body peaking, the pressure in the tank on level 81 reaching the breaking point. The transition was coming. I could feel the passenger seat dissolving. Nobody was looking at me. They were all just warming their hands over the kid they turned into a funeral pyre, and the fire was finally reaching the roof. The wood was spent, the gloom was gone, and as the spire trembled under Martha's first direct hit, I realized that nobody had ever intended for the boy to survive the night. "Hang on, Alex," Margot whispered as they reached the elevator shaft. "It is all almost over." I stayed silent in the back of his mind, feeling the silver sensors in my real spine beginning to melt. It wasn't almost over. It was just the beginning.